Good evening and welcome to our House District 99 Meet the Candidates Q&A interviews with SC for Ed. I am your host, Mev McIntosh, and we have SC for Ed members Lauren Bolches and Deidre Scherer here to also provide assistance. We have two of the candidates who have agreed to join us and participate in our interviews. We have Miss Jen Gibson and we have Miss Newton. So we are going to go ahead and get started with our interviews. We will give the candidates no more than 3 minutes to introduce themselves, and we are going to go in the order in which the responses were received. So that would be Miss Gibson, you will go first in introducing yourself, and then Miss Newton, you will go next. Okay, and then we also have a series of 5 questions. These are the same questions that would be posed to both candidates, and the candidates will have no more than 3 minutes to respond to each question. So we're going to go ahead and begin. Ms. Gibson, why don't you give us a brief introduction of yourself, who you are, and why you're running?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for the advocacy work that that y'all have been doing at the State House. I know that we've all been really inspired to see 10,000 of you at the State House was such an inspiration, and really let us know that we are on the right track when we talk about that we need reform in education, both in the funding and how we are the programs that we have in this state. So I am from the area. I moved here when I was a little girl, and I am a product of South Carolina Public Schools. I'm a product of Governor Hodges' South Carolina Public Schools. I had a great education. I graduated from Wando High School. I went to College Charleston. I was actually the first in my family to graduate from high school. My granddad never learned to read or write. He was a coal miner from West Virginia. And, you know, that presents its own social set of challenges. And so I'm excited to have a college degree. I'm excited that I graduated from high school, but I also understand that there are challenges when you don't, from generational issues. So that's one of the reasons I am so passionate about education. And my son is special needs. He's autistic, and that experience led me to believe that, so much has changed in the public schools in South Carolina. They're not what they were when I was there, and they are not meeting the needs of children that are kind of outside of the bell curve. And so there are so many kids that are capable of so much more, but they're just not getting the resources that they need in the schools. And that's one of the reasons I'm running, is I had the option to go outside of the school system to make sure that my son was in a healthy environment. And I'm running because I want to make sure that everyone else's child is in a healthy environment. So thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Gibson. And Ms. Newton, please take no more than 3 minutes to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you're running. Oh, Ms. Newton, you have to unmute your mic.
Hi. Hey. Thank you very much for hosting this forum. I care a lot about education myself. I'm Donna Brown Newton, and I tell people all the time, I'm not the typical candidate because I'm a mother, and I'm a grandmother, and I'm a lifetime resident of Snowdon community. I've lived there in Charleston my entire life. I am a full-time administrative assistant for Charleston County School District, where I've worked for over 25 years. So I know a little bit about schools and how school operates, and what needs to be done. And I've always been a person that's given 100% of what no matter what the job is. I started a long time ago when my daughter was in Girl Scouts, and I called. I said, "Well, where's the troop in the area?" And there isn't a troop. I said, "Okay," and I'll start a troop, and that's why I became a Girl Scout leader. Long time ago. My oldest was in elementary school. It's been a while. I am a mother of a child with autism, so I know about the needs of education. I know what needs to be done in public school. Luckily, he was doing the school during a time when there were more funding for special ed back then. And I was fortunate that he was able to get the type of education that would allow him to graduate from high school and also go on to college to receive a degree at Trident Tech. So it's important for education. It's very important. All my kids have been educated and went through the public education system. I'm a part of the public education, and I'm proud to say that. And right here in Charleston County, as a matter of fact, as we grew up here, when Charleston was just Mount Pleasant is a one-horse town, so to speak. So I tell you all the time, as before, when I was growing up, I was able to play stickball on Long Point Road, and right now I can barely get out of my driveway. So I know the needs that South Carolina has, the challenges that District 99 has, because I've lived here. I know the needs of the people. I know what needs to be done, and we need a change in Columbia, and I think I can be that change that we have here. Thank you very much for putting this on.
Thank you very much, Ms. Newton. And we will go ahead and get right into our questions. And remember, Ms. Gibson, you will go first. Ms. Newton, you will go next for each question. The first question is this. Ms. Gibson, what is your opinion of the state of public education in South Carolina today?
I think it depends where you live. Some kids are a really great public education in South Carolina, and some kids and some kids aren't. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting quite a bit of feedback on something. Okay, so a lot of kids aren't, and I think that we need to make sure that we are funding each school and providing each school with the resources that they need to service their students. So we need to make sure that there are good technical programs in all high schools, in every neighborhood school. We need to make sure that there are mental health counselors in all neighborhood schools. Too often, especially in Charleston County, we are dependent on the magnet schools and charter schools to meet the needs of our students, and children that don't have the option to go to those are being left out. So I would say that it's inconsistent and it's inequitable would be my biggest concern about the state of our public schools.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Ms. Newton, same question. What is your opinion of the state of public education in South Carolina today? And you need to unmute yourself, Ms. Newton.
Getting that part, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm just trying to overtalk anybody. And yeah, I believe that education in South Carolina is failing. It's failing a lot of students and a lot of communities, because what's happening is we have these charter schools coming in, and we have a lot of private schools, and the charter schools are taking funding from the public school. Right now, Mount Pleasant, I live in Mount Pleasant. We have great schools over here in Mount Pleasant, but we still have children that are falling through the cracks because they lump all the kids together. Now realize we have pockets of students that need special issues, like in the areas in North Charleston, downtown Charleston, they have what's the program they have? Title I schools. But also they're now realizing that some of the kids in other areas like Mount Pleasant, James Island, West Ashley also needs to have an extra boost of education, the extra boost to learn, needs to be different things to be done. So what we have right now is a one-stop shop, and I believe that kids need to be taken as individuals and not just put together in one group. In Charleston, we're doing some good things. My main concern is the public funds going towards charter schools. I said this before in the past, things have even special education has changed tremendously from when my son was going to school. They were able to meet a lot of his needs. Right now, in special ed, the kids are just sort of left to their own devices. Some classes don't even have an assistant in the class. So we need to improve how kids are serviced and teach each kid as an individual and not just as a group of students in a classroom.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Newton. The next question, again, is going to go to Ms. Gibson. And this question is, what steps would you take to improve public education in our state?
Well, the first thing we need to do is fix the funding for our schools. Right now, there are 7 different acts that impact how we fund schools. It is inequitable. It is funded at at the county and the state level, and we don't end up having the right amount of funding in each of the programs. So the first thing that I would say is that we need to repeal a lot of those funding laws and come up with a more equitable way to use the tax bases and distribute them from the state level down. And that would make sure that there is equitable and not equal funding in the school. The second thing we need to do is reform our education. Right now, we put way too much emphasis on standardized testing. There's a lot of money spent on those standardized tests, and there's a lot of too much importance put on them, and they really don't reflect the student achievement and the teachers' contributions to those achievements. And so that was one thing that I would definitely get rid of. And then at the end of the day, we need to pay our teachers an adequate amount. We need to provide a better environment, more professional development for everyone. But at the end of the day, if someone can't make a living as a teacher, they're not going to be able to stay in that profession. So those few things I think can be tackled right off the top.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Gibson. And Ms. Newton, same question. What steps would you take to improve public education in our state?
Well, some of the things I would do, I would agree with what Jen said regarding the testing. There's too much testing. Kids are being taught to the test. They're not learning when they go in the world critical thinking skills because they're taught how to take a test and that's it. They teach them about testing. I know a while back they had to take a test even graduate from high school. There used to be the BSAP test. And now the state has come back and say, you know what, that's unfair. Why should a child go to high school, pass to the next grade level, even become a senior, and graduate, still don't receive a diploma because they didn't pass one test? So too much emphasis is being placed on testing, and I think that's one that should be taken away from it. And also increase the teacher salary. You would attract better teachers, more qualified teachers. They will stay because teachers not going to stay in South Carolina when your starting salary starts at $38,000. You cannot live and take care of family. You definitely cannot live in Mount Pleasant on that salary. So most teachers, they'll come, they'll start teaching, and then they'll decide to have to leave because they can't afford to live. They have to work 2 and 3 jobs as a teacher. So we have to work mainly with the salary, give them more time in class. Also, let's reduce the class size and take away a lot of testing, reduce class size, and better pay for teachers. I think will be one of the main things that will keep bring education to a higher level in the state of South Carolina.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Newton. Okay, we're now on question 3. So, Ms. Gibson, if elected, what would you do to address the funding of public education in our state?
Well, one of the first things I would do is make it less complicated. Right now, there are just so many different funding formulas that are used that it's confusing. It's difficult for county administrators, for the Department of Education to really understand where the money is coming from and how it's being distributed. So I really do think that we're about 25th in the nation for how much money we spend on education, and yet we're so much further down on the list. I don't think it's all a problem of do we have enough money. I think that we definitely need to be putting more money into education, but I do think how we're funding it is a big part of the problem. And so this discussion of how much of our property taxes and things like that, I think that we're getting bogged down in little details. We need to fund education adequately. We need to collect those funds at the state level and distribute them. Too much inequity happens in this state because so much emphasis is put at the county level for funding for education. And at the end of the day, we have counties that just have an abundance of riches and are building gorgeous auditoriums, which I'm very excited about. But we also have schools that don't have internet access. They don't have school books that have been printed within the last decade. So until we get a situation where there is funding to make these programs equal across the board, we have a problem with the way we're funding education.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gibson. Ms. Newton, same question. If elected, what would you do to address the funding of public education in our state?
Well, the main thing I would do is not make it so complicated. It should be a base. It should be part of the budget that goes out every year. And what it should do is make it one of the top priorities in the state. I would think to consider making education one of the top priorities in the state and have the funding a little bit more base where like wouldn't be like one county having more money than the other county. Right now, we have some schools that are being funded by the PTA. The PTA has actually funded some schools to have an extra guidance counselor, even have a nurse at the school. So it got to be a better system of funding it, be a tax base, and even do our put in for our taxes in some way where it be more understandable instead of different methods where each county has their own method of paying for the school system. It should be across the board from the state level. It should be one system for the entire state. And that way, I think would be a balance, be more equitable, and all the schools will be more balanced with the same funding source. And I guess it'd be incumbent for the superintendent of that district to be able to monitor and distribute the funds where it's necessarily be needed at. And starting with, like I said, starting with teacher salary, got to start there and bringing more equity into that, because we have, like I said, in some instances, some classes don't even have an assistant. We need to be able to fund assistants for classes, especially the special ed classes. Needs to have somebody, just have a teacher in that class. It's just impossible for teachers to run, but they do it that way because they don't have the money to finance assistant in the classroom. So it got to be a better way, of more equitable way to fund education, and it should be a top priority. Well, it's be my top priority, especially as someone who worked with a school in the school district for over 25 years. I've seen how some of the money has been wasted in some areas where it should be more money placed in somewhere. They're taking money away. To sometimes we need to start at the ground level, have the money more where in the teacher level opposed to the administrative level. So I would sort of change that system way around and take some of the money from administration down to the teacher level.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Newton. And just to kind of add to what both of you ladies just mentioned, we have strong staff, and we have our secretaries and teacher assistants, our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, our custodians. So likewise, I'm sure that when we talk about pay and increase in pay, our friends who do those necessary tasks and have been serving on the front lines for us when we've been out of school, they too also deserve a good piece of this pie, right? So thank you. Moving on to question 4. So question 4 is this, Ms. Gibson. What do you believe is the top issue surrounding public education in South Carolina?
Funding. Quite simply, there is not enough money making it to the schools, making it to the teachers, making it to the support staff, making it into the programs so that we can have mental health counselors, making it to teachers so that they have the tools that they need to help their students. There's not enough making it into the pre-K programs that we know we have to have so that our elementary school kids, when they start, they're not so far behind that they just cannot catch up. To intervene at the 3rd grade because we don't have them at 3rd grade reading level, that's way too late. We need to be intervening but way before kindergarten to make sure that that doesn't happen. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we have a lot of funding issues. I don't necessarily think all of it, though, is that we don't have enough funding coming in. I do think we're going to need to increase it, but I don't think it's being spent the right way. I think a lot of what we need to do, we need to go back and look at how much we're spending on standardized testing, how much we're spending in administration, how much we're spending on professional development that really hasn't been requested by teachers. So funding ultimately is the root of our major problem. And I believe once we get a better handle on that, we can move forward with the reform measures that I think have a lot of bipartisan support. I think that most people in the State House understand that we need to pay teachers more, that we need to reduce classroom sizes, and that we need to have more prolific programs within schools. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Gibson. And Ms. Newton, same question. What do you believe is the top issue surrounding public education in South Carolina?
One of the top issues is keeping and retaining good qualified teachers. That's number one. And then the way to do that is go back to the funding source. We got to pay them more money. You attract better teachers, you got to pay more money. In some areas, in some schools right now, we have but the whole of Charleston County School District, we have over 50,000 students. We have 2 social workers to work to help over 50,000 students. That's impossible. At the beginning, we used to have a staff of at least 10 of them that covered certain geographical areas. Now we're down to 2 to cover the whole district, which is impossible. So it all goes back to funding. It got to be a better way. They have a program right now in South and in most states where a student can go, teacher can go work into a underprivileged school or rural school and get their student loan paid for, which is good. It's a great program. I love the program. But the problem is, once the 5 years is up, they didn't move. They leave. So the students are still left with not a qualified teacher, because a good teacher are there only because, in my opinion, a lot of them are, some of them aren't. They're just to get the student loan paid for, which is a good incentive, because student loan and what a $36,000 salary, you need to find a way to get that student loan paid for. But it got to be a better system. We start by paying them better, then we can retain them better, and stop labeling some schools as better than the other and not so good. And I think all schools where I work for, teachers do the best they can with what they got to work with. So if the teachers are being paid more, I think we can retain better teachers. So the biggest issue is retaining good teachers who actually have a passion for teaching. But some teachers are just there for a salary, even though the salary's not that great, but some of them are there just for that. And the teachers are not invested into the students, and that's where the problem comes in. You gotta be invested into the classroom, to the students, to be able to give more of yourself. And sometimes students see teachers not doing, giving their all, they don't get their all. So we got to change the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. And I'm just curious, because I know when we talk about school loans, I'm in my 16th year of being in education, and I'm still paying off student loans. About Lauren and Deidre, but that's the story for that's the story for a lot of us. So thank you for those comments and responses. We are now on our last question. And then also keep in mind, ladies, that after we're done with our last question, we will also give you no more than 2 minutes for some closing remarks, okay? So Ms. Gibson, this is a long question, so bear with me. Considering how well educators have handled instruction during the COVID-19 pandemic, and now knowing that the state of South Carolina does not have to administer the standardized tests that we have typically done at the end of each school year, what are your opinions on the accountability measures that are used in the public education system? Oh, unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. I was almost had it. So I would say that I think we should be following some of the national headline with ESSA, that we don't need the level of standardized testing that we do in South Carolina. I think that Pearson makes a lot of money providing and selling tests to us. And I think that we know the teachers we have in South Carolina are great teachers. They know how to assess their students. They don't need standardized tests. They are markers. They show us trends. They can be valuable in a very limited way, but South Carolina based everything on the results of these tests. I hear stories about, children in tears because they started so high at the beginning of the year that they couldn't show improvement by the end of the year and were left out, despite the fact that they were A-level students. I hear of teachers that, are just some of the best teachers in the world that don't have the right metrics, and they fear for their job and loss of bonuses and things like that. And so that's an unacceptable solution. And I think that is one of the things that's come out of this, is that we understand that we don't necessarily need standardized tests to assess our students. I am a firm believer that teachers go to school for a long time and are very well educated on how to assess their students, how to provide differentiation in education to our students. And we don't need standardized tests from big companies to tell them that. And I do think that's a place where we can get a lot of money back and invest that in our teachers and in their support staff.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gibson. Ms. Newton, same question. So considering how well educators have handled instruction and have made these changes because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and knowing that the state of South Carolina does not have to administer these state standardized tests that we typically do towards the end of the school year, what are your thoughts on the accountability measures currently being used in our state?
Well, unfortunately, I'm glad the standardized tests are not there anymore for right now, at least for this year anyhow, because it's not a true indicator of what a child has learned anyhow, because most of the time teaching to the test. My only problem is with this year being, I'm going to call this a lost year for students. So that means a lot of students are going to not know a lot of things. It got to be a better way for us to gauge what a student learns. Because I have a grandson, he's a senior this year and graduating from Wando High School. And they were told when the school decided to close that no matter what, you're going to graduate and the student will go to the next grade level. So for this year right now, we're going to lose a lot of children. Even though we don't have standardized testing, we're going to lose a lot of kids. We're going to lose a lot of education. So I don't know how we won't be able to get that back, but it got to be a better system for judging how children are taught throughout the year. Because it could have been a better system if we had more broadband. Maybe kids could maybe be able to teach, could learn a little bit more. Some kids are getting assignments they can't complete because they don't have the necessary equipment at home, they don't have computers, they don't have the internet access, so they can't even do the work that's required for them to do. So what's going to happen next year is we're going to have a lot of students next year starting out the beginning of the school year with a loss, even if we do start school next year in September. As of right now, we don't know if school will be starting in September or not. But what this tells us right now is standardized testing is not necessary. So maybe this will teach them to go away from standardized testing and maybe, like Jen said, save a lot of money. We agree a lot of things, save a lot of money that goes back into the school, because the money we saved this year from not giving the test, think about it next year. We don't give a test next year, hey, it'll work. So it's a lot that can be done without having to do standardized testing to gauge what a student knows from one grade level to the next. Just a regular test in the school, teach them how to think, critical thinking, without having to worry about the bubble in a spot here or there. So testing is important, but standardized testing, as we see right now, it's not a vital thing that we have to have in South Carolina. So they can find a way to do away with some of the testing, save a lot of money, give teachers more money to teach kids what they need to learn. And it's a win-win for everybody.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Newton. And ladies, that concludes the 5 questions that SC for Ed had for you all as candidates for House District 99. So we will begin wrapping up this interview. And remember, we will give you no more than 2 minutes to provide some closing remarks for this interview. So, and please remember that this video will be uploaded to the SC for Ed website beginning next week for your constituents, for your friends and family to see. So please make sure that you take a minute to view that and share that. So Ms. Gibson, will you go ahead and begin with your closing remarks, please?
Yes. So before I start, I am 99% sure that I said Governor Hodges and not Governor Riley in my opening statement. So I can't wait to see which one I said, but I meant Governor Riley. So that'll be an interesting thing to see. So thank you once again for having us, for providing this forum for teachers and the people of District 99 to learn more about how that we will deal with the education, I would say, crisis in the state legislature. I think it's the most important issue facing the South Carolina legislature. And it is clear that, even though it was a major priority this legislative session, nothing really came out of it. And so that is my pledge, that I will keep attention and make it a legislative priority to continue to work on substantive education reform. My day job, I am the director of philanthropy and development at Trident Literacy Association. So I basically help the adults that were left behind this South Carolina education that did not get their degree. Some of them didn't even learn how to read. And so you know, we're only as strong as our weakest link. And when we're leaving entire groups of populations out of a quality public education, South Carolina really can't go forward and be as strong as we know it can be. As we increase manufacturing jobs in this state, we've got to make sure that we are educating to participate in the economy. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. And now, Ms. Newton, and your closing remarks, please.
Well, again, I want to say thank you very much for putting this on. As someone who works for the school district for over 25 years, I know how the importance of education and the importance of students and teachers. And I've seen it from both ends. As a parent, I've seen how the district works, and also as someone who works in the system. I don't work in a classroom, but I do work in administrative office, so I understand the ins and outs of the financial part of how things are done and how people are it's not equitable in the system is set up. And I believe in education. Right now, like the kids out of school, I've been working with the lunch program, handing out meals to the students in the community. We do it 3 days a week. We feed on an average of at least 100 students per day that we go out there and service students. I work with the bus drivers and the cafeteria workers. Those are the people that's on the front line right now working to make sure the kids at least have a daily meal, which is so important because a lot of kids right now depended on the breakfast and lunch at school they're not getting anymore. So I think it's an important thing that the school district is doing right now by offering meals to the children. And unfortunately, the cafeteria workers that's working are getting paid little to no money at all to be out there and give their time every day to make sure these students have at least 2 meals a day while they're home in the pandemic, especially as being that may be the only meal they receive throughout this whole crisis we're in right now. Education is very important. Like I said, I have a son who's autistic, so I know the importance of a quality education because it needs the school, the student, and the parent need to be invested in what's going on with their children. And it's important for us as parents to be an advocate for our children, because I know sometimes if the parents are educated, then they can't advocate for the students. So it's important for students to, for parents to know how to advocate for their students. That's where education, we failed a lot of students right now because some kids have dropped out. They have children right now. They don't understand even how to advocate for them because they were never educated. So they can't read, they can't write, paperwork come home. They can't help the students with their homework. I knew a story I always tell people when my son was in school.
Miss Newton, that's time.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, ladies, thank you very much for your time, for your energy, and for your service and leading the charge by running for this very important seat. You have some other opponents who are also in the race as well, and we will do our best to reach out to them and give them the same opportunity that we afforded you as well today. And we just appreciate your time and thank you very much for being the servant leaders that you are. And shout out to CCSD for providing over 500,000 meals during this pandemic. While that is such a great accomplishment, I think that also speaks to a lot of the underlying issues that impact education. So we appreciate your time. And please, again, make sure to look for your video starting next week on the SE for Ed website. And then we will also continue to promote and share these interviews on social media. So again, that concludes our House District 99 interviews with Miss Jen Gibson and Miss Donna Newton. So thank you, ladies, for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
Yeah. Nice to meet you too. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.